In games, most NPCs look fairly generic and boring, which makes total sense since they're not very important unless they have something to do with the story or bigger side quests. So spending resources on designing them and making them unique is kinda a wasted effort when you mostly only see them for a couple of times, especially in open world games, since you're gonna make so many different ones too to make your world feel alive. But that's a bit different in the Zelda franchise, at least for the most part for me. Many of the Zelda games have pretty grotesque looking NPCs that kinda stay in your mind just for their unique look, but that wasn't always the case. Zelda 1 barely had any NPCs and Zelda 2 had NPCs in the towns that looked normal though, if we can call these words normal. There's not much detail and even in A Link to the Past the NPCs look pretty normal, except the shooting gallery dude in the Dark World, but that makes sense since he's from the Dark World, so he has to look creepy, and the Lumberjacks. To me the Lumberjacks always look like they come from a completely different game in comparison to the others. Something about them just feels so off, maybe it's because you never really see anyone else with such happy facial expressions. But what if that smile is just fake and it's there to bait people into thinking they are such nice guys? As a kid I even once had a nightmare that they would cut me in half with their huge long saw, but I got over that. Also I was looking at the Zelda wiki and found out that in the Game Boy Advance version of A Link to the Past they changed the generic witch apprentice, which is mostly just the shopkeeper of the game, to Maple from the Oracle games, which is a cute touch. But she's not ugly at all, but I just wanted to say that. Maybe you didn't know it either, and now you know. Yippee, I love learning new useless information to clog my brain with. But now we will come to the first Zelda game that truly introduced some horrendous characters, Ocarina of Time. 3D games were still in their early shoes and the consoles weren't the strongest, so it was hard to model good looking characters. But characters like Cheek, yeah, I'm pronouncing her the German way and there's nothing you can do about it, Marlon or Link himself showed that if they want the character to look good, they can make them look good, so it wasn't just a limitation of the hardware. The first NPCs you find are the Kokiri kids and they look like normal kids, but kids can't be ugly anyways, right? Oh. But soon you venture out and find your way to Kakariko and here things are looking a little bit desperate for the female population because here the men look, well, you got the carpenters, some deformed, lazy good-for-nothings with weird hairstyles who just run around the place all day. They eventually finish the bow shooting gallery so they can do some good too, I guess. A happy bald man who just likes to play his instrument thingy, but he eventually turns mentally insane in the future. The man on the roof who, well, he's a man on the roof, but he looks pretty normal at least. The beggar who looks like one of those hentai main characters that gets completely cucked. Please show off your eyes. Women love good eyes. Or maybe he doesn't have any. Dumpy, who looks, you know, yeah, he probably died as a virgin, and there's nothing wrong with being one, and I'm not only saying that because I am one. The generic guard who is interested in kids' toys, he actually doesn't have a kid, and he just wanted the mask all for himself. Guys that got turned into spiders, and then there's the son of the carpenter's leader, who is just the ugliest guy in the whole village. Not because he's ugly, but he's ugly too, but his personality is ugly too. No woman will ever date you with a personality like that, but it's kinda fucked up that he just basically dies and all the stupid old granny says about it is that he's a total bum. Sometimes it's the people around you that can influence you too to become a bad person. Poor guy. Aside from the granny, the only other girl here is the cuckoo lady who has to take care of the cuckoos despite her being allergic, but she's a cutie. And there's that old man, I guess. I would still like to live in Kakariko though, despite the population being only men basically. It looks comfy to live there. Howell Market has some people who really like to juggle and look fairly normal, but this town only has a single normal looking shopkeeper, the guy who works at the medicine store. I guess otherwise people wouldn't go by there. The other bazaar owner looks scary. I would not like to go shopping there, but he's probably a nice person. Then the shooting gallery owner is literally him again. And the guy running the treasure chest minigame is probably related to both of them too. Either they are all related to each other with how similar they look, or Hyrule has a big incest problem. Probably both. There's also the Happy Mask Salesman, one of the creepiest NPCs in the franchise. If Majora's Mask wouldn't exist, he would just be a rather odd fella, but with Majora's Mask existing, there's a whole new layer of creepiness added to him. You could make a whole video just about him. There's not really much to say about the Goons or the Zoras, except that it makes me wonder how King Zora got so big. How many fish does he eat per day to keep that body? Does he even eat fish? Wouldn't it be cannibalism? All the other Zoras are so slim in comparison. Also the poor Zoras have to swim through the water and maybe even drink it despite him sitting there, where all the water passes through his ass crack and balls. Yummy. Also all the Gerudos are hot and I wouldn't mind them capturing me. I would let them do anything to me. Aside from the main parts of the game, there's still smaller parts like the lake, where the normal fisherman lives, or the old guy who keeps a shark as a little pet. I always hoped the shark would eat him because I feel bad for it. Also, the old man really reminds me of the Skull Mask. They have like the same head form, basically. Move over, Mario, there's a new deepest lore in town. Also, the bean seller who basically shows you that eating too many beans is bad for you, especially if they're magic. There's also the Lon Ranch, but I wouldn't really call Mario or Luigi ugly, especially Mario. Look at those upper arms, god damn, he could throw me right to the moon. Moving on to Majora's Mask. See what I did there with the throw you to the moon? I just ruined it. There's many of the same NPCs, just a bit different sometimes, which makes a lot of sense, but everyone knows how Majora's Mask got created, right? So no point in talking about it. They're mostly the ones living in Clocktown, but there's also a few new ones like Madame Aroma and the Major Dutor, the parents of Kalfa, who seems normal in comparison to them. He takes a lot after his dad though, and I feel a bit bad for Anju when he grows up again. There's also Judo and Marilla, dancers of the Gormon troupe, and for some reason they just look a bit creepy to me. Not ugly at all, but just creepy somehow, especially when they do the dance. Toto is a chubby Zora, who is the manager of the Indigo Ghosts, and I just hecking love this line. Look at that cool hat. He's not ugly, he's just cool as heck, so I wanted to mention him. On the way to the Gorons, we can find Zabura and Gabora. Zabura is pretty normal, but Gabora is an absolute unit, but in a weird looking way. He's actually one of those characters where I feel the technical limitations were actually holding him back. If you compare him to the 3DS model, it's like a whole new character basically. In the original he just looks a little bit off, which gives him a really creepy atmosphere. The Goans are basically just a bunch of Goans again, but I hate the Elder Son. Look at the top of his head. Oh no, 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 no. In the Great Bay Area we got two of my favorites though. Two goofy looking beaver brothers who remind me of that show, the Beaver Brothers. I miss it sometimes. The little brother has moss or grass growing on his head, and the other one has swimming goggles and a swimming ring, despite them being beavers, so they can swim really well anyways. It's so cute, and somewhat ugly too. Also, they swim with their tails being propellers, and I wish beavers would do the same IRL. Or maybe they actually do that and I just don't know. Then we got Pamela's dad in the Ikana Canyon. He mostly stays in your mind because of the heartbreaking story with his daughter, but turning him back into his normal self still makes me think I would be scared seeing him in either form. Sorry to be this mean, I don't actually mean it. But the scariest and ugliest things in the whole game for me are the Guardians. I know it's not nice to call them ugly since they're good people, but just look at them. When I was younger they scared me even more than the moon. Nowadays, I kinda think they are cute though. Wait, I lied. Kamaru is actually the ugliest and scariest dude in the game. He's also dancing like the Water Sisters, and his movements like theirs is just so weird. Combined with his weird body, and his mask. His mask is like, yeah. Majora's Mask really profits from the reused assets if you have played Ocarina of Time before. Seeing the same weird looking NPCs with some minor differences really adds to the whole fever dream atmosphere of the game. And now you probably thought I forgot him, but no. The king of ugly but somehow cute NPCs for me is Tingle here. He appeared in Majora's Mask for the first time, and I will never understand why there's actually people who hate him somehow. He's so nice and he's not even greedy here. Maybe it's because people played Wind Waker more and mostly remember him from yoinking so many rupees from you for the Triforce Shard maps, and that's why he's so hated. Maybe it's because he reminds them of themselves, wanting to stay forever young and be a fairy despite being a middle-aged man without any promising future. But you can change, I'm sure you can, and find something you enjoy doing, like Tingle does with his maps. He even got his own games, and one day I will make a video about those too. I love Tingle and I wish he would get the respect he deserves. Wind Waker. I absolutely love Wind Waker's cel-shaded look, but it makes it really hard to make NPCs truly ugly. But they achieved it for two characters in my opinion, Mrs. Mary and Maggie's dad. No hate for Mrs. Mary, she really cares for those kids and is a great teacher probably, but yeah, I would hate school if she was my teacher. Not saying teachers should be hot, but she seems like the kind of grandma that would always pinch your cheeks without asking and smells pretty bad. Maggie's dad is just ugly, and his personality is even ugly after he becomes rich. It taught me at a young age that money isn't everything in life. Also, poor Maggie is cuter than rich Maggie, despite the bunny years. And I say that as a huge bunny fan. Here the NPCs stay in your mind because they're just so well done. Everyone here also just looks so unique, even if they're not ugly. It also introduced the Koroks and I just love them. They're so cute and I was so happy that they came back for Breath of the Wild. And I know the video is about ugly NPCs, but I had a total crush on Mila back in the day, rich or poor. Hands down the cutest humanoid NPC in the game. Sorry Madly and Beetle. And well, there's Tingle here too and his outrageous prizes. He got really greedy throughout the years sadly. He only got himself to blame for all the hate he gets, I guess. Twilight Princess, the king of the ugly Zelda NPCs. After Wind Waker, they went back to a more grounded look, but not for the NPCs. I think if you ask someone who the ugliest NPC in the Zelda games is, many people will have one name on their mind: Marlo. The kids in general look a bit weird, but way better than their parents mostly. I kinda had a crush on Beth when I was a kid myself, and it makes you wonder how she became so cute when you look at her parents. But it gives you Autumn Village some flavor. It kinda reminds you of a real life village. Sorry if you live in a village. Then close to it, we got the Farnwoods with Koro, who is someone with an afro who lets birds live in there. Then Square Enix just yoinked the design to make stuff from Final Fantasy XIII. When I was writing this, I was wondering, are there any more characters who let birds live in their hair? And I couldn't really find any because Google sucks so bad nowadays. If you know any, please leave a comment, because I really want to know more, if they even exist. Then in Kakariko, there's not many people. Renato is a total Chad. Then there's Barnes, who I always hated, and he made me hope I will never start balding, and he's ugly. And then there's Luda. I always thought she was a boy as a kid. She's cute though. I would have had a crush on her too if I thought she wasn't a boy probably. I had a lot of crushes on fictional girls when I was young. And nothing changed. I'm still a loser who likes fictional women, grown up ones nowadays though. I'm mostly glossed over the fact that most Goans in the other games look pretty normal, but here you got this stinky little Goan who lives inside of the dungeon, and holy heck, imagine the smell. You got like tiny volcanoes all over himself that exhale smoke and gas. I would not want to get close to him at all. In Lake Helia, we got two clowns and I just love them. They're depressed clowns and are going through their midlife crisis, running their minigames while actually hating it. Imagine taking your kid here to fly with some chickens and your kid has to see them. Traumatized for life. I could understand people being scared of clowns if they all look like these clowns, but that's what makes them so special. Here there's also Hannah and Isa, who are both related to Koro, the bird and the Afro dude. And yeah, they all got the good genes from the parents. Isa rents you the bones and Hannah is the fisherwoman of the game. She's so cute and the only one in the family without an afro. But maybe she will let one grow when she becomes older. I love fishing here because of her and also a little bird Purdy and the marble minigame. By the way, if you want some great marble games for the Wii, play Koro Rinpa 1 and 2. The Zoras in this game are again nothing to write home about, except that Queen Rutella was a total hottie. Other non-humans except for the Goans and Zoras are the two Yetis who live on the Snow Peak ruins. Yeto the husband and Yeta the wife, a cute couple that can get pretty damn scary, especially the wife. You know, insert boomer wife joke here, even though I would love my wife if I had one. Hyrule Town has one of my favorite NPCs in any Zelda game, Agitha. I had such a crush on her back in the day. She's a self-proclaimed princess of the Insect Kingdom, and you have to give her bucks to get the bigger wallet, and she also gives you rupees for it. She's also one of the only NPCs that are not scared of Wolf Link and would rather play with him than running away. I was so happy when they even added her to Hyrule Warriors. I like how at first glance you might think, that's probably some spoiled rich kid who is very arrogant, but she's the total opposite. And when do you ever find a princess that isn't afraid of bugs and actually loves them? It's a nice contrast to the usual portrayal. Obviously she's not ugly, but I wanted to talk about her because I will never get another chance to talk about her. Hyrule Town also is the home of many other weirdos, in a good way. Being a weirdo is not a bad thing. Pulu, who is supposed to be thinking about as a Chad. Outside of Pulu's minigame tent, there are 3 girls who are fans of him, who will actually become your fans if you beat the minigame. So every time you walk past, they just start following you. It's really cute. We got Giovanni, the average Italian who got turned into gold, and you have to turn him back by bringing him pose. Chartley, some arrogant snobby dude who runs a store that later gets bought by Marlo if you donate enough. I love capitalism. Charlo, who is ugly and prays to the goddesses every day to become hotter and begs you for money. Madame Fanadi, who is the fortune teller, and to be honest, I would. Dr. Bovile, who is a doctor, who could have known, and he looks like one. Zol, who polishes shoes because without polished shoes, you're not allowed to go into the store of Chartley. And then we also got Telma, who runs a bar which is more like a hideout. Here, the Resistance has a little back room. They're secretly working on how to bring peace back to Hyrule. There's Chad, who is a nerd but looks like a Chad. Russell, who we know from the start of the game, who is also one of the kids' dad. Auru, who is just some generic old dude, and now we got Ashe. What another cutie. I was always a bit sad that we never actually really got more information about them. They don't really play a big role at all, and it makes me sad. I want to know more about Ashe. Also, Telma is a part of them too, and I think many people wouldn't really consider her outright ugly, but kinda, but again, I would. There's also the tribe of the Uka, where Uku and her daughter or son, I'm not quite sure, I think it's a daughter, come from, and it's a bunch of flying chickens. Like obviously they're kind of like cuckoos, but a little bit more humanoid heads, and they make weird noises, and they have a whole own dungeon, and they live in the sky, and it's, I don't know what they were smoking, but if you look at these, you think they're evil, but they're really nice, and you know, I wouldn't mind living besides them in the sky, but to be honest, I would have nightmares if I would be their neighbors. So actually, you know, I would also not eat them. You know, like you wouldn't want to turn these into chicken nuggets or wings or whatever, because they live and they talk, and that's what real chickens do too. No, I feel sad. I should never eat meat again. I should become vegetarian actually, just for Uka and her daughter. I saved the best for last, and well, Midna plays a huge role, so I wouldn't really call her an NPC, but she is an NPC. And back in the day, when I posted on Zelda forums and didn't beat Twilight Princess yet, I saw a couple of people always saying some rather lewd things about Midna, and I thought, that's a bit weird, isn't it? But then I beat the game and was like, wow mama, I totally get it now. Nowadays I know they probably also meant Imp Midna most likely, and now I even get the appeal of that too. I've gone up so I can enjoy a great short stack. I want to read out the Midna peer copy pasta here, but yeah. Also, obviously, she's not ugly, and I talked a bit too much about non-ugly NPCs here, I guess. Overall, Twilight Princess just has this grim fairy tale look to it, that even the other realistic Zelda games like Majora's Mask or Ocarina of Time can't reach for me. There's such a nice mix between cute, weird, grotesque characters here. Looking at them just makes me think they're NPCs done right. Skyward Sword has a bunch of NPCs, but for some reason none of them ever stood out to me. Except Goose maybe, but he gets the most screen time of them, so that just makes sense to me. Maybe it's also because Skyward Sword is the Zelda game I have played the least, and for me it's also the Zelda game with the worst overworld. It always felt extremely linear and never gave me a reason to revisit the starting town or some of the minigame islands. In Twilight Princess, many NPCs had really distinct outfits on to look different, combined with their weird facial features or bodies. Here most outfits just look so similar, and instead of having weird bodies or facial features, most of them, well, this one is chubby, this one has a big nose. There's nothing special going on, except for Sparrow and Gully. Just look at this dude and this little kid. Checking the wiki page for the NPCs here surprised me with how many there are and how little I remember them. Obviously there's also Beatrix, the friendly demon who wants to be a human, but yeah, I don't know. Even the clown just looks like a generic clown. Look at Kina and Karane though, cuties. At least the game has a bunch of new races, like these little things called Kikwi, almost like Kiwis. And that's what they look like. They're cute, but something about them just makes me think they come from some cheap mascot Jump and One franchise as enemies. And then there's the Parela, well, I don't even know what to say. The Mogma at least look kinda okay, but that's it again, just okay. Just like the game itself, it's the most forgettable Zelda game in all regards for me, and I was happy Zelda went into a new direction afterwards, but that's just me. The game has lots of fans and it's nice to have a bunch of different opinions, isn't it? Since we are speaking of change, we have to talk about Breath of the Wild, obviously. And well, since it's also the last one so far, the Tears of the Kingdom releases soon. It has the same problem like Skyward Sword has for me, if we don't count the champions and the ancestors who don't look ugly at all, so I can't count them anyways. All the normal NPCs in the towns or the ones you meet on your travels are just pretty generic looking. None of them really stayed in my mind despite playing Breath of the Wild a couple of times already. Except some that have something to do with a little quest, like the shrine where you can't walk over the flowers. If you show me a picture of her, I would recognize her, but right now I would not be able to describe how she looks like. The problem most likely is that it's an open world game and it's really hard to remember most of them when the game just has too many of them and you won't spend a lot of time with most of them. I said most a lot, wowie. Combined with their rather boring designs, I always thought most of them, whoa, were pretty ugly, but not in the wow, that NPC is ugly, but more in a way where something about them feels off. And nowadays I even know why. The NPCs in Breath of the Wild are actually based on the Mies. Yep, I couldn't believe it at first too, but you can Google it and get it explained to you in a way better way than I ever could. There's tons of great NPCs in Breath of the Wild, like Bolson for example, but none of them are really ugly or weird looking enough, and it makes me a little bit sad. Except for Kilton, I love that ugly little fella. He better come back. Also, Breath of the Wild is the first Zelda game with really fuckable Zoras for me, and I just wanted to get it out before the end. And there we go. I apologize to the fans of the handheld Zelda games, but they make it hard to find ugly NPCs. The Ori games have a simple sprite design, same for Link's Awakening, but they are still very pretty, especially the Minish Cap, where ugliness can't really shine. The same goes for the DS games, because they have the Wind Waker look that also makes it hard to find ugliness. Also have to say it, Spirit Tracks is pretty underrated, and I love Zelda in this game. Probably my favorite Zelda of all time. Character-wise, not my favorite Zelda game. That would be Twilight Princess. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you can leave a like, or you can leave a dislike if you can't appreciate the ugliness, which makes you a shallow person. So don't be one. Leave a like. No, I don't want to beg. Don't do anything if you don't want to.